Going live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the ALG podcast. I am Frank McCaffrey, and we're asking that you please subscribe here. Let me do that again. There you go. Subscribe. I'm joined by ALG President Rick Manning, and we've got a lot to talk about, including a lot going on regarding the DOJ. Now, ALG released an article about how the DOJ, Barr, the Attorney General, and Trump are unhappy that Roger Stone, was being sentenced to 9 years. The call was for 9 years for this guy, and no one can really figure out what exactly it was he did. Your thoughts, Rick?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to know, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, 9 years, it's a little bit extreme for what's basically a trumped-up case against Roger Stone. Is this ridiculous, or is this ridiculous? You know, Trump is saying he's going to go after and sue a lot of people here. This would be a time when a lawsuit would be very valid. I think Trump should be suing those who are going after Roger Stone. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it's I don't know that Trump has standing for anybody who's going after Roger Stone. Roger Stone has standing. The president has the legal capacity to provide a pardon for at any point in that case, and I'm confident he's looking at those options. But here's the thing: there's a lot of frustration amongst people who are even semi-sentient people in D.C. who look at what's happened and they say we have a two-tiered system of justice and it's not right. We know that the FBI went after a variety of Trump supporters. We know that they spied on Carter Page getting illegal FISA warrants at least twice and probably all four times, using fabricated Democratic National Committee charges as the basis to spy on the Trump campaign. We know they did that. We know they did. This isn't speculation. This is fact. And yet not a single person involved in that has faced any criminal liability. They haven't been indicted. They apparently haven't been questioned. It's beyond belief that activity was allowed. The people who were put under those kind of scrutiny end up spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawyers, and end up spending basically going broke because they made the mistake of supporting Donald Trump for president again. And the people at the FBI and DOJ and the Obama CIA didn't want Donald Trump to be president, and they were going to do everything they could, not just to stop him in 2016, which they failed to do, but also to try to undermine the presidency in 2017, 2018, 2019, culminating with this fake impeachment. And the people who were behind all that activity are held up as being heroes, and some are still at the Department of Justice. And the president rightfully is saying, what the heck's going on here? And is the Roger Stone case is brought into a head because of the insanity of their sentencing request of 7 to 9 years against a guy who, quite honestly, under normal circumstances would have been fined, and it would have received a fine and would have been told to go away. The reason they were pressing for such heavy charges against Stone was simply because they thought that he was the key to being able to get to Donald Trump. Same thing with Manafort. They thought that both of those two guys, who used to be partners a long time ago in a political consulting firm, they thought that they were the keys to being able to get to Donald Trump. And neither one of them, had anything to give them. And because neither one of them fabricated evidence against Donald Trump, they threw the book at them. And if they just made something up, they would have gotten relatively light. So you've got a system here that truly is one-sided. And Donald Trump is tired of it. He's tired of the people who supported him getting persecuted by the Department of Justice. He wants something done about it, and I don't blame him.
Okay, now we're also hearing that there's a mini feud going on between the Attorney General and the President over the President's tweeting. Do you think that that's being exaggerated by the left as a way to drive a wedge between the President and Barr?
I don't know what's going through William Barr's head. I do know that, they've got somebody wrote a story saying that there was that William Barr was frustrated and had contemplated leaving, quitting that Attorney General job, and everybody else picked up that same story. There's no new reporting on it. It was all based on one anonymous source. There's no sourcing on this. Yeah. So once again, it's a fake media play, and I don't believe anything they write until it actually happens, because quite honestly, they're trying to make something happen. Yeah. Let's be clear. The President of the United States has a right to talk to the Attorney General. The President of the United States has a right to have an opinion on what should happen in cases. The President of the United States has a right to tweet about whatever he wants to tweet about, as long as it's not classified. And by the way, the President of the United States can even tweet on classified stuff, because the President can declassify anything he wants to without anybody's permission, because he's the President.
He's the Commander-in-Chief.
It works. So you have this system where the left is attempting to say, oh, Bill Barr can't be part of the Trump administration because the AG has to be neutral. Yet Eric Holder called himself Barack Obama's wingman. He was the Attorney General. He was the guy. He was found in contempt of Congress for failure to provide documents related to Fast and Furious. He stonewalled to the nth degree, trying to get any documentation out of the Department of Justice on anything being done by the Obama administration. And yet Holder is still Holder's walking around like he was the last great Attorney General. We had the Attorney General who succeeded Holder. She met with Bill Clinton in what was supposed to be a private meeting while Hillary Clinton was being examined for whether or not she'd broken the law. So they had a private meeting to talk about their quote-unquote grandchildren, but heck, apparently that was completely okay, to meet with somebody who's actually the husband of somebody who's actually under investigation in a secret, what was supposed to be undisclosed location. Turned out it was an empty plane at Atlanta airport. So you had you had that, and it's just at some point here in D.C., I think around the country, people are tired of this unequal justice and the fact that the blindfold's been torn off of the Lady Liberty, and now she's looking directly and saying, if you are to the left of me, you are free and clear. If you're to the right of me, you're going to face persecution and penalties. It's not the way it's supposed to work. I think Donald Trump's tired of it, and I don't blame him.
Okay, now changing subjects here, Michael Bloomberg is saying that there are dire consequences if Bernie Sanders gets the nomination. He's really now working to undercut Bernie Sanders, yet it seems the Democrats, a lot of them really want Bernie Sanders. There's one attempt after another to rig Bernie Sanders. Even Rush Limbaugh, the conservative commentator on radio, is saying, man, there's something's really fishy here about the way they're treating Bernie. And Michael Bloomberg, of all people, is going to try to steal the nomination from him? Is that what's going on here?
Well, for Bloomberg's strategy to work, he has to have a contested convention. He can't have Bernie Sanders go into the convention with enough votes to get the nomination. And the challenge that exists is, as you move into Super Tuesday, which has a huge number of delegates, I think it's about 45% of the delegates in the Democratic side are going to get allocated. It's a big number. Includes California, Texas, other big states. And he's looking at that, and if you have 70% of the people don't want Bernie, but there's 70% are divided up amongst 4, 5, 6 candidates, and Bernie gets 30%, he wins. And that's simple math. And so Bloomberg is saying to the candidates, saying, if you're a straggler, if you're a laggard, if you're not, you are actually helping Bernie Sanders by staying in the race, you need to get out. The irony is Bloomberg hasn't been on the ballot yet. He basically ran his campaign with an idea that he was going to go and do a complete Super Tuesday strategy. That's where he was going to get his first, be on the ballot for the first time, because he didn't want to have to deal with debating 16 people, 24 people, and go through a year of this process of running for president. He wanted to spend $500 million in ads and be able to say, I'm now one of the front runners. Put me in there, and even though I haven't had one person actually vote for me, everybody else should get out of the way because I'm the one person who stopped Bernie Sanders. Well, that's his strategy. That's what he's saying. And if I were an Amy Klobuchar or Elizabeth Warren, I'd be telling old Michael Bloomberg to pound sand. If you wanted to be president, you should have run for president.
Now, I'm looking here at Real Clear Politics, and it's interesting. I think this is the first year they've ever actually started publishing betting odds on the race. Right now, Michael Bloomberg, according to the betting odds, is at 33.2%. Bernie Sanders is at 44.0%. It's interesting, Hillary Clinton gets 5%, but you don't see Michael Bloomberg doing too much in the polls other than the betting odds. Doesn't seem like the people really want him. He's not a charismatic figure. This is not like a guy that the world wants to rally behind. We remember some of the things he did that were insane when he was the mayor of New York City. I remember you and I used to joke many years ago about the soda ban, about how he was telling people what size sodas they could drink. I mean, some of his other ideas just seemed like it was kind of like a madman in office as mayor of New York. And do we really want that with our president?
Well, he didn't like extra large sodas because they were too big for his sippy cup.
Oh.
But it's listen, the Democrats have their own set of problems. I think it's really interesting that Bloomberg is now trying to tell Biden he needs to get out. Everybody's known Biden's been. I was telling you, 3 months ago that Biden wasn't going to be the nominee. He wants to clear the field of everybody but him so he can be one-on-one with Sanders. Here's the problem that Bloomberg has. He can spend as much money as he wants in advertising. He can use his media empire to publicize himself as much as he wants and tear down President Trump as much as he wants. The bottom line is the Democrats are a far left party. Michael Bloomberg might be far left, but he's left a trail of breadcrumbs that are incredible that don't fit into the far left narrative. He can't just suddenly wave a magic wand and say, "Oh, I'm one of you," when in fact, as mayor of New York, even Rudy Giuliani said he really broke the idea of what Giuliani did with stop and frisk, because what Giuliani's policy was stop, question, and frisk. So you stop somebody, you said, "Hey, what are you up to? What's going on?" If the person wasn't doing anything wrong, they were just sitting there, or we're hanging out. Well, okay, well, move along, and they don't bother them. But Bloomberg took out the question part of the equation, just said stop and frisk. And stop and frisk means if you sit there and you see somebody standing around and they targeted African Americans, it's clear based on what Mike Bloomberg says. They targeted African Americans, and they, by stop and frisk without questioning, essentially, if a guy had a joint in his pocket, that person went to jail. So there was no probable cause for frisking, and by taking the questioning out of the system, Michael Bloomberg incarcerated and put records, put a lot of blacks into a position, Hispanics for that matter, into a position where when they had to have a box that says, "Have you been arrested?" they had to check yes, because under stop and frisk without the questioning, you're getting arrested if you have anything going on, and that's how they basically were just sweeping people off the streets with impunity. So Mike Bloomberg's going to have some challenges. He's going to be, I don't know how he reconciles some of the things he said, some things he's done with an electorate that is radical left.
He just does not strike me as that big, booming, charismatic personality that comes around from time to time. He just doesn't have it. He's not
He's not even Mighty Mouse. I mean, he's just a guy with a lot of money who's running ads. And
That's it.
The challenge anybody who runs for president. In fact, the reason he wanted to run, he didn't want to go through a year-long process, is he didn't want to have the scrutiny. He's got a massive Me Too problem.
Yes.
It was part of his workplace. It was a Me Too problem in the workplace, and it was widespread. And it was well known. And you sit there and and it was far. And so he's going to have, as a guy who there's going to be suspicions about anyway, as somebody who was never a Democrat and now is, I think he's going to have one heck of a time explaining his record and explaining some of the personal challenges in his life to Democrat voters. And if anybody should consider being, stepping aside and stop dragging attention away from people who can actually win, it should be him.
Yeah, there is a certain something about him. It's like he's got BO or something. The voters on the left just like, oh, I don't want to.
Well, you know what? Let me just give you the simple difference. When Donald Trump walks in a room, and I've experienced this, when Donald Trump walks in a room, there's electricity. People start chattering and they say, wow, Donald Trump's here. And it's because Donald Trump, when he chose to run for president, had been in the public spotlight for 40 years. People knew all about Donald Trump. They knew about him being in Studio 54 in the 70s. They knew about his various, his first and second and third wives. They knew all this stuff.
His boxing and wrestling.
30, 40 years. All played out on the front page of the National Enquirer, and people would look at it and say, okay, this guy's, they liked him. They watched him on The Apprentice for 10, 12 years, however long it was. So they liked him. And as a result, he has a personality, and he's got a media entertainer personality that people like. Bloomberg, on the other hand, doesn't have that advantage. He doesn't have any of that persona from being, milling with people and being with people. He doesn't have a persona of a guy who has walked around on construction sites and talked to the actual people swing hammers. And so he doesn't have any of that. And as a result, he's going to come across as being an aloof guy who's very comfortable in his country club, very comfortable with wealthy people, but really has great disdain for the average American. And in that way, he's a perfect Democrat elitist, because that's where they all are.
It does feel like there is that classic liberal elitist. I mean, just the idea of wanting Hillary Clinton to be his running mate. Who wanted Hillary Clinton back in the picture? Okay, now I'm going to change the subject one more time. Donald Trump has pardoned the man who owned the 49ers during the best years of that franchise's existence. He failed to report a bribery case in 1998. Trump is pardoning him. He owed up to $1 million in fines. This was probably begging criticism from the left, and people were probably saying, oh, yeah, Trump and his cronies with names like Eddie DeBartolo Jr. But do you think that this is actually a good thing for Donald Trump?
Well, I don't know that it's political, but some people say it helps him in Ohio because the DeBartolo family is very big in the Mahoning Valley. I think what this is about is Donald Trump has looked around and has said, there's been a lot of these bad political prosecutions or people having their lives turned upside down by overzealous prosecutors. And so when things come to his attention, he's now looking at them, and he's looking at them with an eye of, gee, was this really fair? In the case of DeBartolo, somebody offered him a bribe. He didn't take it. But his crime was he didn't tell the FBI that he'd been offered a bribe. So his big crime was somebody else tried to bribe him and he didn't take the bribe, but he didn't report the bribe. That's essentially what his crime was. So, you look at that and you say, does a person, he had to give up his NFL franchise, he was suspended from it, his life was turned upside down once again. So Donald Trump basically expunged that record. I think so. There's others where, and he did a number of, and each one is an individual case. But I think each one's one where Donald Trump looked at it and said, this punishment, the punishment is well beyond the crime. Blagojevich, and the former governor of Chicago, who was alleged to have, or was convicted of, trying to sell the Obama Senate seat. There's a lot of sealed files that have been sealed for 11 years on that case that have President Obama's name all over it. and you can't get the files.
Yeah.
And President Trump looked at it and said, well, he served 9, 10 years. That's he served his time. They convicted him and put him in jail for 20. He said, I'm gonna basically commute the sentence down to the time served. Given the fact that he made a decision that was what was fair. Presidents can do that. They've got the right to do that, and as a result, that's part of the deal. At least in this case, and in many of these instances, it's not people who are. These are people who you can make a case that they committed a white-collar crime and they had well served their penalty, and Donald Trump's attempting to rectify some of the problems, and he's within his rights to do that. And would I have necessarily done it? I don't know, but he's certainly within his rights, so he's doing it.
Yeah. The Blagojevich case, of course, those who remember it will tell you it was almost comical. He was auctioning off Senator Obama's former.
Well, it was, but when you got down to it, there was and rightfully so. The FBI did a big sting operation, all this, but it's just interesting that if Frank Harvey were here, he would say there's a rest of the story, and the rest of the story revolved around the former president whose seat was being auctioned off, and you can't get the rest of the story because the FBI won't release the records. Judicial Watch has had a FOIA request in on those records for years, for almost 10 years, and the FBI and DOJ won't release those records. They'll release you have to fight with them to release a lot of stuff. They won't release that at all, and there's absolutely no.
Oh, looks like we're freezing up here, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I guess I'm going to have to call this thing off because we're frozen. Rick, can you hear me? Oh. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're breaking up, so I'm going to call this thing off. I'm going to be like the referee who steps in and stops the fight here, ladies and gentlemen. We hope that you...
Take care, man.
Yes, absolutely. You too. You too. Have a good day, everyone. Please subscribe. Thank you.